How could we describe this scene? We could say something like, Steph Curry's jump shot went into the basket. But if we weren't at the game or we weren't watching it on TV, we really have no idea what this looks like. So instead of saying that, we could say something like this. Steph Curry's jump shot is captivating. The ball effortlessly rolling off his fingertips with impeccable form as it glides like a sun setting into the basket. And then we really get a strong idea about what this looks like, what this jump shot looks like to someone who's not there. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. And it's what we call using descriptive language. So what I want you to think about is how you can revise your draft of your personal narrative to really make it come alive to the reader. And this is what we use descriptive language for. It's to plant vivid images into the reader's mind, to describe images to your reader as if they had never seen the person, place, or thing before. And if you remember your personal narrative, I won't know these people involved or perhaps some of the places involved, so you really have to paint a really vivid picture for me so that I can see that. And it's almost like it's making your reader see the image through your eyes, as if you were there with them when you saw the thing that they saw. And we can do this in a number of ways. Perhaps the most straightforward way is by using adjectives. Adjectives just describe what things people are like, and we put them in front of nouns or objects. So for example, instead of just saying car, we could just say blue car, tall person, big house. Now these are very simple adjectives, and we'll be looking later at more descriptive words that you can use. You can also use similes, right? If you remember, similes are where you make a comparison using like or as. So for example, brave as a lion, crazy like a fox. Maybe if you're thinking about describing a character. Or using metaphors rather. Again, it's like a simile, it's making a comparison, but it's not using like or as, rather it's saying that one thing is another thing, or A equals B. For example, her tears were a river, the teacher was a dragon. And then we've got hyperbole, is where we exaggerate something for effect. So for example, my tears were an ocean. Now they weren't actually an ocean, but I describe them like an ocean to give you some idea about how upset I am. So if we look at this image again of Steph Curry making his jump shots, we can see lots of things being used here. That word captivating is an adjective describing Steph Curry's jump shot. The word effortlessly, which I find very hard to say, is describing how it comes off his fingertips. Impeccable form, impeccable just means something like perfect, so another adjective describing how he's shaping his shot. Gliding is a good verb to use, a more sophisticated verb than just to say the ball left his hand. And then lastly we have that nice simile like a sun setting to describe how the ball is going into the basket. So let's look at a couple of examples of descriptive language. We have a scene here of some butterflies in a field, but if I just say to you there are some butterflies in a field, you don't really have any idea about what that looks like. Let's see how a really good writer describes it. So we have Toni Morrison, and she writes, "The soft trembling highway of persimmon-coloured wings lifted from the milkweeds, cut across the green treetops, then vanished." Okay, so we've got this word trembling and highway, right, to describe how these butterflies are moving across the field almost like they're on a road. Persimmon is the fruit, it's kind of orange coloured, so we get a really vivid idea about what these butterflies look like. And then we have even a word like milkweed, which is a type of plant, so rather than saying plant, she's actually using a very specific word to describe exactly the type of plant. So we really get a very strong idea about what this looks like. Here we have an image of the sea, right? It's a stormy scene. And we could, just say, well, there were a lot of waves, they were crashing, it was a stormy night or something. But let's see how another writer describes it. He says, this is Herman Melville, "Vast swells of the omnipotent sea the surging roar they made as they rolled along in a boundless green. Okay, so we've got some really great descriptive words here. Instead of saying big, he says vast. We get a real sense of the size and scale of this. The omnipotent sea, right? That's a metaphor. Omnipotent means all-powerful. The surging roar, right? So it's really getting an idea about what this sounds like as well. And instead of describing the sea as blue that we normally think of the sea, right? He's describing it as this boundless green to give you an idea about just how infinitely large the sea is. So I've given you some descriptive words and some lists of different ways in which you can use descriptive language. So we've got adverbs. Adverbs are just words which describe verbs. We have emotion words. I'm going to come on to that in a minute. We have character traits. So when you're thinking about how you can describe certain of your characters, there are some great words that you can use here to really give you a better specific idea about describing a particular character. Vivacious verbs, all right? So verbs are action words, but instead of saying just like something like walk, we could say stroll or march or roam to really give the reader a sense about how this person's walking. Warm description words, okay, that's a positive tone. That's a way of describing subjects of your writing which are positive. Okay, so instead of saying good, you might say decent or sufficient or adequate. And then the opposite of that is cool description words, right? That's where we have a negative tone. So instead of saying something is, someone is upset, you might say they are saddened, frustrated, or insulted. And then we have the 5 senses. I'm going to come on to that again in a minute. And then lastly, we have a list of color details, which is instead of saying orange, to give you a better word to describe what this orange looks like. So let's look at emotion words, okay? So maybe you're describing a character and they're happy, or maybe you're describing you as being happy in a particular time. Instead of just saying happy, which is kind of a boring word, doesn't really give us an idea about how happy you are, you might say you're ecstatic, or joyful, or blissful, okay? If you're describing yourself as mad, you might say hysterical, or livid, or upset. Okay, so we really want to think of words that we can use that really give the reader an idea about how a character is, or how a person is, or how you feel. And then similarly with the 5 senses, if you're describing something and you're trying to give the reader a sense of what it looks like, or smells like, or sounds like, here is a great list of words that you can use, right? So if you're describing, I don't know, a pizza, right, that you're eating, okay, instead of saying it was good or it tasted good, right, you could say it was fragrant, which means nice smelling, or delicious, or strong, or garlicky, right? We really get a better idea then when I'm reading this of what this pizza tastes like or smells like. So let me just go through what I want you to do. There's an extra credit Padlet, and I want you to think about how you could describe this scene using descriptive language. The only rule is that you cannot use the words sad, happy, very, or cry. Instead, you're going to use one of these techniques to describe it, using adjectives, adverbs, similes, metaphors, hyperbole, maybe even personification. You just want to be as creative as possible. And what this scene is describing is this guy, Daniel Villegas, this 41-year-old man. He was arrested in 1993 on suspicion of double murder, and then he was found not guilty by a jury last year, but that was after he had spent 25 years behind bars. His conviction was eventually overturned because they found new DNA evidence. So I want you to think about how you could describe this scene in the courtroom when this guy finds out that he's been found not guilty after spending 25 years in jail. You could say something like, he collapsed with anguish like a puppet whose strings have been cut, or the courtroom erupted as he wept, or the men clutched him consolingly. This really gives the reader a strong idea about this particular scene. So lastly, After you've done that Padlet, think about how you could use descriptive language in your own personal narrative. How could you describe people and places so that the reader really gets a strong idea about what this looks like? Not just in the exposition of your story, but whenever you have a character or a place that you're trying to describe, use those lists that I gave you to really give the reader a really strong sense of what this looks like in your particular story.